You're listening to the Mile High Vineyard podcast. For more information about the Mile High Vineyard, go to milehighvineyard.org.
Hey, happy Memorial Day, guys. Weekend. It's awesome. What I also like to call National Youth Pastor Preaches Sunday, because everybody's out of town. In Colorado, we find God not in church, but usually in the mountains. So we're all out starting this weekend through the summer. It gets pretty thin. So I like to jokingly call it National Youth Pastor Preaching Sunday, because it's kind of funny because everyone else is out of town, but the youth pastor is actually out of town with the pastor. So they usually ask an elder, which is really nice, but now the elders are either busy or out of town, so then they ask if anyone would be open to preaching. That's where you get me. So my name's Grant Simmons. I've been in the church for quite a while, over a decade. My wife and I call this home. This is our home, and really privileged and honored to be here with you guys and share some thoughts on wrapping up Proverbs. I'm actually not in ministry. My full-time job is a consultant and a teacher. So you might see the teaching part of me come out a little bit, so be prepared for some theory. We're wrapping up the series called Wisdom That Works. We've been diving into Proverbs, mostly topically, to understand what does it look like to become a wise person. Solomon, who's known to be like one of the wisest men or people ever to be alive, talks about, he's the majority of Scripture, of Proverbs written by Solomon. He talks about two roads. One is the road to wisdom, and another road is foolishness, or to be a fool. And so we talk about these two roads. Last week, Jay talked about contentment, and it's being the opposite of restlessness. So what I want to talk to you guys about today is just a question that Proverbs comes up over and over, is, are you teachable? Is it a joy to lead you, and you accept wisdom from the people around you? So this last week I spent the entire week in just outside of Durango at a Young Life camp. My family and I got the honor to do a thing called Work Week. So Young Life, if you don't know, is an organization that is really powerful, that focuses on youth and invites them to relationship with Jesus. To kind of explode an experience for them, they do camps. Out throughout the country. There's a camp outside of Durango that has a zip line and tubing and crazy, like you eat way too much, like kids love it. And it's, night away, 5 nights away. And so to get that kind of ramped up, they need a work week. And so they invite people to just serve over a week. Guys, it was terrible weather. It was snowing and raining every single day. And so it was not exciting to work outside. But because I am a former landscaper, they asked me to be in charge of like the trimming and pruning crew. So I took a group about 5 college students and just trimmed dogwoods and bushes all week and hauled them away. So that was my job. It was pretty cool. So before we kind of started the work, I asked all the college students on my team, hey, tell me about your experience with a hedge trimmer. A gas hedge trimmer is crazy dangerous. If you don't know, it is circulating it all the time. I've got scars on my knees right here from just cutting for years and years. So I asked them, what's your experience with trimming? And I had a whole different slew of experience. One guy was like, I've never done this before. I don't even know how to prune. Great. And other guys was like, yeah, I actually had a summer of landscaping. So I took that and kind of measured what would it look like to lead this team. And surprisingly, it was the people that were the most teachable on my team actually had the most experience. They were engaged. They'd look at me. They'd kind of take my teaching. I kind of tell them how to prune this thing, or this is how you'd cut it here along the branch. And they took it. And actually, I realized it in reflecting, it had nothing to do with experience, because the one that had no experience was not teachable at all. I'd tell him to do something, and he'd be like, whatever, fine, I'll do it. And he just does something completely different. And so it actually has nothing to do with experience or skill. I saw that it was more about humility. The guys that were on my crew that looked at me and took it and listened were at least a lot more humble than the others. And so And that's what Proverbs actually invites us into, is humility. And first of all, our first point is be humble, just like Kendrick Lamar says. So Proverbs 3:7-8 says, "Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. It will be healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones." Proverbs 26:12 says, "Do you see a man who is wise in his own eyes? There is more hope for a fool than for him." See, humility is the starting point of teachability. Prideful people think they know more than everyone else and don't need to learn anymore. Teachable people know there's always something more to learn from everyone. So according to Proverbs 3:7-8, humility coupled with the fear of the Lord is healing and refreshment, something I think we all would love to increase in measure. So what is humility? Humility is not a human emotion or a demeanor. It's simply the lack of pretense. Humility is acceptance and honest confession of what is actually true. And what is true is you and I know nothing. We live in the information age. We can Google anything we need to or YouTube it, but we know little to nothing when it compares to the wealth of wisdom and knowledge out there. So how do we obtain humility? How do we get it? Well, because I'm a good Christian millennial, I'm going to quote C.S. Lewis, obviously. So in Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis writes, "If anyone would like to acquire humility, I think, tell him the first step. The first step is to realize that no one is proud. That one is proud, And a biggish step too. And if you think you're not conceited, it means you are very conceited indeed." Mere Christianity. Good, bringing the truth, right? So the first step, according to C.S. Lewis, is that you are prideful, just like accept it. And the second thing that I would submit is continuously claiming that and keep doing that for the rest of your life. That is how you pursue and obtain humility. And the third thing is actually self-awareness. So how do we know what we don't know we don't know? Well, I'll say it again because that was weird. How do we know what we don't know what we don't know? That's how we can obtain some humility. Well, I told you the teacher part of me would come out. I'd like to introduce the idea, the concept of the Johari window. So the framework, and we'll bring it up on the screen here, the framework is really interesting. Johari was this cool mystical box found in Arabia in 1980s that really understood, what does it look, no, I'm just kidding. It's literally a guy named Joe and Harry. In 1955, hippie psychologists from California, literally Joe and Harry, they're like, let's combine it. So Johari. Sounds cool. So they were into self-actualization. What does it look like to be more self-aware and more understanding of who I am and who others think I am? So we'll talk about each box. So the top left, you'll see the open area. That's known to others and known to self. An open area, it can be really surfacey. So self-awareness is like, I have a beard. You know I have a beard. I know I have a beard. It's in the open area. Super high level, right? Selfish, surfacey level. But it can also be a little bit deeper, like into traits. So I'm an extrovert, or I'm creative, I'm relaxed, or I'm anxious. Everyone knows that about me, and I know that about myself. That would be something that would be in the open area. The next part is the hidden area, not known to others, but known to self. This is also known as the facade. Actually, addiction can sit in this category. I know that I struggle with this, but no one else knows. It is hidden, it is my facade, it is my mask. Something deep inside of you that is hidden. No one else knows. The top right, you guys will see, not known to self, but known to others. This is called the blind area. This is, everyone knows this about you except you. You have no idea, it's your blind spot. So an example of this is I'm married, and blind spots come out pretty well when you're living with somebody. And so what I didn't realize is that when I get pretty tired or anxious, I'm not doing well, I get pretty sarcastic and really mean. But I didn't know that. My wife sure did. So one of those came out, and we had a good conversation about it, but I had no idea. And so that thing in the blind area became known to me and was in the open area. So you can see things that move, traits, things that you didn't know can move within these boxes. Finally, it's the unknown area. I don't know it, you don't know it, ain't nobody know it. It's the unconscious, something that we have to dig for. So Joe and Harry proposed that we need to make the open area bigger. And we do that by seeking wisdom from others and disclosing what we know about ourselves. So we want to make that open area larger. By doing that, we take all the things that are in the blind areas. We ask, literally, what am I not seeing here? And that open area becomes even bigger. And then things that are inside of us deeply that we need to be vulnerable for, we move that up into the open area. And that's when we do self-disclosure. We tell people, we confess what we're up to. This is the road, self-awareness is the road to humility. I don't know what I don't know. And that it's not just a selfish endeavor either. It takes other people inviting them into your story to make that open area bigger. Now, Proverbs 11:2 says, "When pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with the humble is wisdom." The humble person is aware of his or her weaknesses, is their understanding of their blind spots. They own up to his or her failures. They're slow to speak and quick to listen, James 1:19, and considers others more highly than him or herself, Philippians 2:3. They also ask for feedback when it's not offered. So the second thing that I feel Solomon was really clear about was that wise people actively seek wisdom and instruction in your life as your life depends on it, because it does. Proverbs 4:7-9, 13 says, "The beginning of wisdom is this, get it, get wisdom, get some. And whatever you get insight, prize her highly, and she will exalt you. She will honor you if you embrace her. She will place on your head a graceful garland. She will bestow on you a beautiful crown. Please hold of instruction. Keep hold of instruction. Do not let go. Guard her, for she is your life." Do you actively seek feedback? Or do you just kind of manage it? Do you run away from it? Do you actively seek feedback in crisis or wisdom in crisis or just big decisions? Or is it proactive? One of the things that, as Daniel alluded to, I get to serve in a way about financial coaching for our church. So my wife and I will help folks through budgeting for financial crisis. So the stories we hear are pretty crazy. Well, either from pastors or Connect cards will say, "Hey, we're losing our home next week. I don't know what to do," which is crazy. It's crisis. And hear me, if you're in crisis, please get counsel and help. But I'm pretty sure there's a couple things that are happening as indicators leading to losing a home. Same thing with a couple that asked for, "Hey, we really want to buy a home next month. We're looking right now. We've got $100,000 in debt, though. So is that going to ruin our pursuit of a home?" Yeah, it will. You will be in for a shock. And also there's a crisis of, "Hey, we're going through a divorce. I have nothing to my name. What do I do?" Those are tough conversations to have. And listen, please get help if you're in crisis. But what Proverbs is so relevant here is that it's not just because it's for the crisis, but it's for everyday living. We had a couple come to Lonnie and I and said, "Hey, I think we're doing okay. Could you just kind of do a checkup for us on our budget?" And so we talked to them. We realized that they were killing it. They had absolutely no debt. Their house was paid for, no car debt, no credit card debt, no student loan debt. They were killing it. And they just really wanted some wisdom to tweak, just a little bit. I mean, what an enjoyable conversation it is for me to be in that space to just give maybe a little nugget of wisdom because they're killing it. It's so much fun to teach those types of people because they're proactively seeking feedback and wisdom. Relationally speaking, we had a friend, my wife and I, who just got engaged. And she came over to our house with her boyfriend, and said, "Hey, we want to talk to you about our relationship. We just really want to make sure, is this a good idea? Are there any blind spots getting in the way? Do I not know what's going on? Should we get married?" That question was amazing before people got married. They had an intentionality, a wisdom about them that sought that feedback. So what if we were a people that fought through shame and sought wisdom like that, proactively, when things are going well. So maybe you know someone or or maybe you are someone who desperately seeks counsel while in crisis. To pursue wisdom when things are going well, that's the wise person. The Bible calls someone that's just looking for wisdom in small moments the person that is a fool. Don't be that person. That means taking time to reflect on your life and your relationships through the lens of Scripture, reading books, asking wise teachers around you, and saying no to things that hinder your pursuit of wisdom. Those who pursue wisdom look for mentors, they read books, they're listening in podcasts all of the time. They memorize Bible verses, ask questions of others to gain clarity, and they organize and keep what they learn. Proverbs 4:13 says, "Keep hold of instruction. Do not let it go. Guard her, for she is your life." Do you have a way that you keep instruction, wisdom, feedback? One of the things I did about a year ago is I started storing all of the feedback I got professionally in like a OneNote. It's like a cloud OneNote. So all of the emails I would get from clients or my team members, I'd take it, flag it, and just copy and paste it. So I have this whole notebook of feedback, good and bad, opportunities and things that went well. And so when I'm stuck, especially professionally, or I just need to like that a boy, I open the OneNote, and it really invites me into some of the things I've been learning along the way and strengths that I have, just as Proverbs said. So point number 3 that Solomon invites us to is that learning from the right teachers is the way to the road of teachability and wisdom. Learn from the right teachers, like you're doing right now. So, good job. Joke. Yeah. All right. So, it is our responsibility in the church to discern who does and doesn't have and teaches wisdom in their words and their actions. There are many smooth-talking fools out there, and there's a lot of soft-spoken wise people. Proverbs 13:20, "Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm." Proverbs 12:26, "One who is righteous is a guide for his neighbor, but the way of the wicked leads them astray." Proverbs 11:14, "Where there is no guidance, a people falls, but in abundance of counselors there is safety." So much like we talked about in the previous weeks, it's all about relationships. Solomon is laser focused on putting the right people around you that you trust, that you can rely on, and that will tell you what's up. They will challenge you. Solomon's super clear on this. So the men and women we follow in spiritual matters need to be shaped by God's word. I ask that you would consider this with me, is praying for God to lead you to wise people around you. The writer of Hebrews says this, something very similar, right? He goes, "Submit to your leaders, consider the outcome of their way of life, and imitate their faith. Make it a joy for them to lead, and not a burden, because that would be a no advantage to you." Do you have leaders in your life that challenge you and tell you who you could become? Or have you just pushed them away? The last point that I think Proverbs teaches us, which I hate, I'll be honest, that those that are teachable receive correction as a blessing. No. I don't know if you're anything like me. I was like, I'm in for the whole point. I'll be humble. I'll get the right people. But I will not receive correction as a blessing. Feedback freaks me out. Proverbs 15:31, "The ear that listens to life-giving reproof will dwell among the wise." Proverbs 17:10, "A rebuke goes deeper into a man of understanding than 100 blows into a fool." Proverbs 5:12-13, "And you say, 'How I hated discipline, and my heart despised reproof. I did not listen to the voice of my teachers or incline my ear to my instructors.'" So basically, the one who ignores instruction despises himself and is stupid. Bringing it, Solomon. Being really clear. Yeah, again, I I don't like feedback. It hits hard for me. I don't see correction well. There's a story I'll help kind of introduce or like explain this. So have you ever been fired? Yeah, like only 2 people, 3. Okay, there's a couple of brave people. That's really awkward to ask. Elevator talk. Hey, my name's Grant. Have you ever been fired? So I was fired. 3 years ago, I got fired without warning. No idea it was coming. I got sat down by my leader and said, "This is your last day. Pack up your things." And I was like, "What?" Like, I had no idea. And as a man, it was deeply shameful. It hit to my core and my identity that I was tied up so into work. I had no idea what this would feel like. It was like ripping me out of the job. And so I remember vividly walking with my stuff, like the classic, like in a box, walking to my car 5 blocks and thinking about how am I supposed to call my wife, who's 6 months pregnant with our second child, and tell her that I just lost my job, that I was fired. I remember crying before even getting on the phone because I couldn't even handle it. I had to figure out my speech. It's like the prodigal son, like he's walking, like, here's my speech. You know, like I was in that place. I wish I could tell you the next day I felt great and I was amazing. I was in a rough place. My work was tied up to my identity so much, and it was such a shameful experience because my vow is to people please. I will do anything possible to please others, and I will run like crazy from shame, both emotionally and physically. I will run from it. And so this was hitting all sorts of triggers. You know it's a trigger when you're like, your hands get really sweaty and you're not doing well, even if you're talking about that story again, you know it's a trigger. So it was wrapped in my identity. I sought some counsel. I asked others, like, is this just me? Like, what did I not see? What were my blind spots? Was I not aware of? I talked to others, and I started kind of this process because I had questions like, am I employable ever again? Who would hire me? How do I tell someone in an interview that you get fired? No, we recently split over creative differences. Like, how do you like say that, right, in an interview? It was tough, but God was really good in that moment. I did some healing and slowly built up a network. I got hired again on another job, which was fantastic, but those triggers were still there. That story was still inside of me. And I didn't know that until I got feedback about a year in. My new job, I overcommitted on something. I could not keep my promises on a deliverable, and then I got feedback on it. And as soon as that happened, it had nothing to do with the project. I clammed up and said, here we go. I'm going to get fired again. Like everything came rushing. All the emotions, all of that was like overwhelming to me. It was deeply shameful. And I realized it was all because I got fired and I didn't really repair some of that story of mine. And so when I took that feedback, I said, I'm going to lean in. I'm going to go for it. And so what I did is I met with my leader every other week for 6 months about this specific feedback and said, hey, what can I do differently? What am I doing differently? Let's talk about all the feedback that others around me on my teams are observing of me. And that began this healing process of habitual seeking feedback. I would ask for feedback like crazy. I had people tell me, stop asking for feedback, give me some more time. Like I had emails and emails about asking about feedback. And that became rejuvenating, refreshing, just like Proverbs did. To this day, like, I still have my job, which is fantastic. And now I seek feedback all of the time. And it doesn't trigger me like it used to. I want Proverbs 17:10. A rebuke goes deeper into a man of understanding than 100 blows into a fool. I want to grow and be more like Christ from the wisdom and rebuke that wise people give to me. So in closing, I'm thinking about college and some of the teachers I had some really hard teachers. Well, I mean, I had some really easy ones too, right? Where they kind of just show up and you're like, hey, congrats, here's an A. I don't know if that was your experience, but I had some really hard teachers in college. And it was funny because those are the ones that were created no leniency. A B- was a B-, right? Like that point is exactly 0.9 and I'm not changing it. They were crazy tough graders, and they just asked for excellence, and they demanded it. Actually, I realized that those were my favorite teachers. They inspired me to become better than who I was. And so one of those teachers specifically was, I asked, would you be one of my mentors? Because you were striving, you were calling something out of me that I want more of. And so he became a mentor in my college years. And then I actually asked him to be a groomsman, and he said, yeah. So he was a groomsman in my wedding. He was a man that was next to me in my council. Are you just someone that desires feedback like that? Or do you just manage it? If your immediate reaction is to avoid criticism, it basically means you're immature. I was that guy. I still am a little bit. And I'm growing because I'm seeking it out right now. So right now, I want you guys to consider some questions with me. Are there people in your life that push and challenge you? Do you move towards them or do you move away from them? Are you defensive when feedback comes? When you know someone's winding up to give you feedback, do you physically go, yeah, I'm totally ready for your feedback. I'm open, right? Like, you are not open. Physiologically, you're saying something completely different. Do you get sweaty when someone's about to give you wisdom or feedback, to give you instruction? It's an indicator of something that's going on. There's somebody in this room right now, I know deeply that he can challenge me at any moment, and I will take his instruction. I trust him with my life, and it's life-giving. Is there someone like that in this room for you? Second question I want you guys to consider is, are you teachable? And are you a joy to lead? Are you teachable, and are you a joy to lead? I asked these two questions of a couple people this week. I asked my coach, I asked a leader in my organization, I even asked my father-in-law those questions. If I challenge you guys to do this like I did, you'll be really surprised with the responses that you get. So my challenge to you this week, go ask a couple leaders in your life, are you a leader in my life? Because I think you are. It's good to kind of level the relationship. I think you're a leader, right? That's a good start. Then, am I teachable, and am I a joy to lead?
Thank you for listening to the Mile High Vineyard podcast. We would like to encourage you to respond to what you just heard by filling out a Connect card and sharing a prayer request with us. As a staff, we pray over those each week and would love a chance to connect and pray for you. To do that, please go to milehighvineyard.org/connect. You can also respond by being generous, as God has been generous to you. You can do that by giving online at milehighvineyard.org/give. We hope to hear from you soon. Thanks again for listening.